go on ahead, have a seat. You know what time it is. It's time for me to talk to you. Today, we're going to be talking about discernment. But you need this for everyday living. A lot of times, we hear on the internet talk about, oh, what's discernment? You know, I have good discernment. No. Discernment, in 2 words, what discernment is. Discernment is just wise judgment. A lot of people just be judging, but they're not doing it with wisdom or they're being wise about it. So you'd be like, oh, well, I said this. Yeah, but you're a judgy person. A broken clock is right twice a day. A judgy person is probably going to judge right a few times. That's the numbers game. Discernment is important because it can save you from a lot of heartaches and a lot of headaches and whatever issues come in between. And I feel like I wouldn't be a big sis if I told you that you need it and I don't explain how you can get it. To quote Samuel L. Jackson on the Boondocks, there are known knowns, there are known unknowns, and then there are unknown unknowns. The absence of evidence is not the evidence of absence. Now, how does that quote tie into my discussion on discernment? Discernment is about what you know and what you don't know. As I mentioned before, discernment is to judge wisely. Well, how can you judge wisely? You do it based off of the things that you know. So I call this PICK, P-I-C-K, which stands for pattern recognition, intellect or reasoning, critical thinking, and knowledge. This is what you know. This is what you can absorb into your brain and understand. When you're able to process things, you're able to make a judgment based off of the information that you have. These are the bare minimum tools to do so. Now, the thing about discernment is, it's not always about what you know. It's also about what you don't know. And this involves like vibes or atmospheres, any intuitions. If you're a spiritual person and you believe God's talking to you, that counts. If you believe in the meaning of dreams, that also counts. If you believe in astrology, these things tie into it. On top of that, there are going to be things that you might be faced with at the time of the scenario that you do not understand. This is when you're going to have to believe in yourself, even though you don't know the full context. That is the known unknowns. And then spirituality, if you're that type of person, it's almost like your unknown unknowns. And the unknown unknowns and the known unknowns is what tips people from just having judgment to having discernment. So a lot of times people doubt their discernment, and it's due to the fact that the unknown variables cannot be confirmed. Because it's not a direct yes or no answer, it exists or it doesn't exist, it creates confusion and people don't really trust their judgment. So sometimes the people around you will question your discernment because they will talk about your mental disabilities, any issues that you've been having, maybe even feelings. Those things can lead to them doubting you and you doubting yourself. And sometimes you're going to think it's all in your head, but either way, it will create doubt because the unknown is a big portion of what makes discernment work. Now, if you're like, well, I'm tired of doubting myself, I want to have discernment, how can I get discernment or how can I work on getting discernment? What you're going to do is follow these steps to build up your discernment. Discernment, sometimes it's a gift, sometimes it's a talent, but all things can be better with continual training, studying, and practice. That's what we're going to be doing today. So, the first step, foundation level, you need to know yourself. Have self-awareness. This is going to come back at the end. Self-awareness means understand how your mind, your body, and your spirituality works. This is when you should know how your body responds to things, what triggers, etc. All right. Once you have the foundation, you can then start into step 1, and that is learning the basic PICK skills. You need to have pattern recognition, your intellect, your critical thinking, and knowledge at a beginner level so that way you can improve it. I'll tell you how to do that later on. Next step that you're going to do is you're going to need to understand that there will not be explanations for everything. There are going to be things that you don't know, and there are going to be things that you cannot explain. This is the unknown aspect. You need to accept the fact that these unknowns exist, right? Once you understand that, you can fully accept those terms. You will then begin to trust more within your unknown abilities, okay? Next, what you're going to do is know the difference in your feelings. So once you accept that there are unknowns, you then need to understand what's the difference between this being in your head, this just being one of your moods, this is part of your symptoms, and or it's completely different and this is your unknown sense going off, right? This is when you need to have the self-awareness aspect. This is when you figure out how you respond to things, how you comprehend things, because that's also going to tell you the difference between this being an unknown sense and this is your mind kind of playing games with you. Step 4 is grow your known skills, which is just your pattern recognition, intellect, critical thinking and knowledge skills even more. And you can keep repeating it over and over again through practice. And by a certain point in time, as you continually practice and execute it, you will be able to have discernment. Now, I covered your foundation base. I'm going to explain step one, which is just getting your pick skills up. So, typically, this is supposed to start in school. Now, depending on your education system and or the culture in which you live in, lifestyle, region, they do things different. And they might lack in one of those few aspects. So, let's say you went to school, but you didn't learn those skills. You're starting from scratch. Where do you begin? Let me go down the pick skills and where you could start. So, for pattern recognition skills, I recommend trying to start with Sudokus, puzzles, a little bit of history, looking at book tropes, and looking at psychology. Why did I list off those three things? Sudokus and puzzles have a pattern in which you can do to decipher things. Sudokus for numbers, puzzles are typically more of images. You're trying to connect the dots together. History is in pattern recognition because of the quote, "Those who do not learn history are bound to repeat it." And realistically speaking, we have been repeating history for quite some time. So if you look back throughout all of the years of this world's existence, you will see the pattern made by humans. Same thing with psychology, but psychology is more for the mind, right? They talk about the different symptoms. They talk about what could cause it and what patterns can be shown through there. And so being able to pattern recognition. And then finally, books. Books always have tropes, and tropes follow a specific formula, aka a pattern. So these are going to get you to see things, even though it is not a direct pattern like red, blue, red, blue, red, blue, red, blue. You get me? All right. Next skill is your intellect. Intellect is your reasoning. This is when you should be having reading comprehension questions. Your debate questions are going to debate shows. Controversially, I would say the ID channel, possibly true crimes. I could also recommend Law and Order or detective shows. Now, why would I recommend that? Detectives involve mysteries. Mysteries involve deductions. And how you interpret the information that is given is your reasoning. And that is what the ID channel does. So typically when I was growing up, me and my mom, we used to watch Law and Order. And so what we used to do is we would watch the whole thing in silence. Then during commercial breaks, we kind of talk about who we think it is based off of the information that is given at that time. And it's like, well, why would you think that? And it's like, well, they said this, but then this person said that, and then it could mean this. And it's like, you know. So that's reasoning. That's my intellect working. Reading comprehension questions are the easiest way, or I would say the most direct way, to build on your intellect, because it's going to tell you what to actually focus on, what to look for, and hopefully whatever notes that you look for in those comprehension questions, you're able to then use outside of reading. So you could be reading history, you could be reading science, you could be reading humanities and law, and those same comprehension skills would apply to each of those reading topics. Debate questions, you're trying to voice what you're thinking in your mind and the reasoning in your mind on to a verbal conversation or a topic. So both of those are important. That's going to help you with your intellect. ID channel, true crime just seem to be more fun for people round and round. Now, your critical thinking skills. This one is a hard one. This one is a hard one because it is taught in school, and you usually don't use it as much outside of the classroom. So my biggest advice is just asking questions about anything and putting yourself down a rabbit hole. You can do this with the ID shows or the true crime shows, or you can do it with any show, right? Let's think about kid shows. Why are Max and Ruby typically by themselves? Why are Max and Ruby rabbits? Why do rabbits have a thing, right? Why do rabbits have a home? Why do they have like a yard? Why do they have different foods and they're supposed to be herbivores? Why are all the rabbits different? Why did Clifford grow from being a small puppy to being a big red dog? Because Emily Elizabeth, you know what I'm trying to say, love. All of these are questions. And once you get an answer to that question, you ask more questions. It's like a child asking, why? Well, why? Why? Right? And once you get down to the bottom, if it ever happens, the point is you're going to keep asking these questions because now you're going to be able to question everything. It will be in your nature to ask questions. Critical thinking involves you asking a lot of questions even if there isn't an answer. Questions are going to be your biggest point into critical thinking. And I'll leave it at that. Finally, knowledge to me was the fact of you just need to get a bigger brain. You need to learn more. How can you learn more? You can watch different education shows, PBS, National Geographic at a point in time, Too Cute was on, River Monsters, History Channel. I recommend reading the encyclopedia, learning a new word a day, actually going through the alphabet in the dictionary, doing Squirtle, which is like one of those word games, Scramble. All of these help build up what you know. When you feel like you're good in what you know, you're a little bit more lenient in what you don't know. All right, the next step is understanding that there will be questions with no answers. Whether it's because you can't find the answer, they don't have an answer, or they won't give you an answer, it does not change the fact that you don't have it. You can try to be logical all you want, which is encouraged. However, there are going to be things that are illogical. Sometimes humans are illogical creatures. And so if you try to get the logical answer out of everything and trying to logic your way out of things that you really can't explain, you're going to sound like those protagonists in those horror movies that ignore all of the signs. You're going to sound like that dad from Insidious. He saw the signs, he did all of that, and he still stayed in the house. And, we as growing up, we talked about, why was that dad so stupid? He just did not want to believe the things in front of him. Simple. He don't believe in the unknown. He's a logical person. We joking like, why was this dad so dumb? He had the supernatural right in his face, and he didn't understand that he's an idiot. We should have been out the house. Why didn't he? And the answer is because he's a logical person. What answer that actually lies in that movie was an illogical answer because spirituality does not exist in a logical person's mind. Sorry. If you don't want to end up like him, you need to understand there will be things that you cannot explain, and you need to accept that. All right, this is step 3. How can you tell the difference between emotions and your unknown sense? To me, you got to ask yourself questions. Critical thinking, this is where it comes into play. So, one question you might ask yourself, right? If you've had panic attacks before, if you had anxiety attacks, is this your first time feeling like this? And if you have been living for years, which I assume you have, there's going to be very few emotions that you could experience for the first time that you probably haven't seen before or experienced before. So if this is a new feeling, take note of that. That might be your unknown sense, or it could just be another developing emotion. Now, this is when we're going to go into maybe the next question, and that is use your pattern recognition, right? Do you get like this every time you're in this setting? Is it the setting that is making you feel off? Is it what you're doing that's making you feel off? Is it when you're doing it, where you're doing it, and or why you're doing it? All of these things you need to answer, because then that could deter you from like, oh, this is my unknown sense. So let's say you're out at a restaurant and it's your favorite restaurant and you feel off, right? Is it you eating at the restaurant? No, you ate at the restaurant before. Is it the restaurant? No, this is your favorite restaurant. Is it when you're going? Maybe, but if this is your favorite restaurant, I'm assuming you're going at that time. Is it who's there? That also could be a point, but we don't know. Typically, regulars are there, and if it's safe, then it's safe. Is it why you're doing it? No. So right now, it's your when and your where. We have narrowed it down. You see what I'm saying? And if it's a person, that might be your unknown sense. And if it's the actual timing of things, that could also be your unknown sense. Everything could be one, which I know sucks. I know my explanation sucks. But the point is, if you're able to narrow it down, you're able to figure out whether it is an actual emotion or if it's something more. I'm just going to leave it at that. A way to kind of help you decipher it is to have knowledge, and a way to have some knowledge is to write your things down in a diary and give timestamps for reference, right? So let's say typically around the time you went to that restaurant, right? Around that time, every week, you get the jitters or you get that feeling. Then it's not necessarily the environment, it's just you having that time frame. It's just your body reacting at that time in this location, right? But if your body, if we're looking at your stamps in your diary and you're taking notes, if you don't react this way towards anything at this location nor at this time, it could ding off a light. So just be aware of it. Or another way to track the difference between your emotions and it being an unknown sense is you trying to recall that emotion that you have felt. Do you feel this emotion when you're sad? Do you feel this emotion on a certain day? Do you feel this emotion when you eat this certain food or when you've done with work and work has stressed you out? All of these things matter because then you're able to do pattern recognition to decipher whether or not it is an unknown sense or an emotion. And then finally, know how your symptoms are. All of that just kind of correlates into that. And so if you're like, there's some things that you don't know, then you got to understand there are things that you don't know and just, keep a tab with it. So, yeah, trying to decipher those things is a very difficult thing to do. And that's going to take time, energy, and consistency. And unfortunately, I can't give you a quick solution. Just keep practicing it over and over, and you'll be fine. Now, my step 4 that I used on the slides was keep growing your pick skills. And so I explained that as one. The first reason is if you have less unknowns, you would probably have a more sound judgment. So you're going to be leaning more logical than you are on your unknown senses. Number 2, I believe you'll trust more in your unknown senses because now they're not going off for no reason. Your emotions, your body. So your body giving off this, I just want to go, or it's in fight or flight mode, and you're not seeing any danger, you're going to trust that instinct more than you would if you just had a lot of unknowns that you don't understand or you didn't know how your emotions rang. And then number 3, growing your pick skills. It has more benefits than just discernment. You can have good conversations, trivia nights, good debates, discussions. You can meet more people and try to connect with them. You'll be able to see things happening from a different perspective, and all of them can be interesting. Remember, practice, 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 practice. This is not a one-time thing. This is not a you do it for a year and you'll have it for life. You can lose it. You can gain it. You can grow it. You can let it die. All of those things is not just judgment. It is wise judgment, however it goes. But yeah, that's about it for this talk. I'll see you around.